All right, what's up, guys? Davey here. I got sick on like Friday, but grading case analysis doesn't wait, so you're gonna have to put up with my coughing and snotting and sick voice. I'm gonna send this out to everybody. I did not ask Lindsay and Olivia and Brenda if I can do that, so I hope they don't mind. But I think they know what I think of them and individuals and their scholarly performance as a team. So I'm not worried about it. The written case analysis was great. Still going through that. But I thought it'd be a good idea to give everybody else kind of what I'm looking at as I go through it. So I also went through the feedback. Maddie and Maria, great feedback, is good stuff. Also Yasmin and Megan, good. Yasmin, especially your idea on creating policies. That was one of the things, right? It's like, okay, they need policies here, consistent policies, and it needs to be enforced. And in my head, I'm like, great, what's the policy? Show us the policy. So for everybody else, when it comes up, if there's something where there needs to be a revision of the policy or creation of a policy, great, give us the policy, write the policy. So I'm glad it was there in the feedback. In my head, in this case, after I went through it before I listened to the presentation, I thought, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There's three things happening. Number one, the company grew really, really, really fast. Number two, they do not have scalable processes and systems, meaning it worked just fine when it was one plant and there was one HR person, piece of cake. Now there's multiple plants, a couple hundred employees, which leads to the third issue of they're just severely staffed in terms of administrative overhead, specifically HR. So grew really fast, which gets into culture formation that Lindsay was talking about. Number two, they don't have scalable processes and systems. An example of that would be every time a Walmart store is opened, they have an employee handbook, they have policies, this is how they hire, recruit, pay, discipline, etc. down the line. That's a scalable process and system. Whether there's 1,000 stores or one, that's what they do, cut and paste, rinse and repeat. They didn't have that, and part of that is the lack of HR staffing. So those are kind of the three things that stood out to me. A couple other positive points, good attire. I know it sounds silly, but it's easier to assume someone's competent when they speak competently, which all three of them did. Good backgrounds. They weren't walking around on their iPhone in their backyard cleaning up dog poop or something. So appreciate that. It was very professional. It was very well done. With one exception, which I'll share in a minute, really good format too, following through just kind of what was laid out in the syllabus. Well, two exceptions. One thing that I would add at the beginning, and then another thing that was kind of missed at the end. So we'll hit that. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go through my feedback kind of as I heard it. And the purpose of this is not to take Lindsay and Olivia and Brenda's fine work and fillet it on display for everybody to see. The purpose is for everybody to see, this is how I'm looking at, these are the questions that I ask, and that'll hopefully inform building the next set of presentations. I will say this, straight out of the gate, I assigned them this sort of on purpose, straight out of the gate, without having another case or a series of feedback kind of as an ad hoc measure. They had to figure it out, or I guess it's not ad hoc, whatever happens, whatever before ad hoc. Then they did a great job not really knowing what to expect. So well done there. Okay, point number one. Give me a big idea slide, and I want that on content, not process. Meaning the very first thing that I should hear, Lindsay introed it with, here's the deal with the case, and then jumped right into the issues. If you could pause it for a minute, give me the background of the case, that's a fine place to start, and then just time out for a minute and go, here's some of the things, like some of the root issues here are culture or recruiting systems or HR or whatever the roots, and then we're seeing that played out because managers aren't really following the rules. That'll give me an idea of your kind of line of logic and where you're heading. So a narrative, what I mean by overview, I don't mean like, well, first we'll look at the issues, and then we'll look at the alternatives. Yeah, we all know that. That's what's laid out in the syllabus. Give us like your take on the case. You don't need a slide for that, I mean, unless you want one. We're talking 30 seconds, 40 seconds. So give us the big idea, high level overview before you dig in. Number two, there needs to be more of a defense of the issues. So when you say, here's an issue, right, and here's either what that issue is or how to fix the issue, I want to go one step before that and say, that's not the issue. I disagree. Argue with me. Like, tell me I'm wrong. Convince us all from the data that's in the case that that is the issue. If the data in the case isn't compelling, you can say, it's not compelling, it's not a bulletproof argument, but my sense is this is probably kind of what's going on. I'll give you an example of that. In this case, you have a cogeneration coal plant, and you cannot get more blue collar in Kentucky, right? Bunch of plants, a bunch of coal plants, right? So if you were to say, I suspect that managers there probably don't give a crap about HR rules. They probably don't know the HR laws. They don't know they're putting their company at risk. And they probably think their idea of doing a good job is being a big, tough, firm, fair, and consistent. That has its benefits, but that doesn't make a really effective manager. So that would be something where you go, the case isn't compelling, but looking at the context, it seems like when I say culture issue, you just look at the proximal context, right, that the case is in. So anyway, that's what I mean. Defend the issues. Tell me what the issue is, and then prove to me that's the issue. The third one, that was one thing Lindsay was talking about. It took me a while to figure out what she was saying, but I think it had to do with just kind of terminology or lexicon. Like Lindsay kept saying like company culture, and I'm thinking every company has a culture. If I had a consulting job and I called Lindsay and we formed a company we have a culture. It's just not very developed. It's not very mature. It might be good. It might be bad. So every company has a culture. I think it took me a while for her to, basically, she's looking for an adjective before the culture. What they wanted to form was a strong or a good or a positive company culture and company brand. I wrote down in my notes, you're talking about intrinsic rewards and intangible rewards. I think that's what you're talking about in terms of your employee value proposition. Point number 4, that was it, company culture. Point number 5. I think everybody did this. It was assumed that the manager filled out the form incorrectly. Now, in your defense, the case made it appear like the manager filled out the form incorrectly. However, we do not know. That conclusion was jumped to. The person filled it out wrong. We got to fix it. We don't know that. We have to have our employees back, and managers are also employees. So assuming that they did it wrong without actually conducting an investigation and finding out. So if you get into an investigation and the employee says, no, I didn't leave for another job. I left because I didn't get promoted. And the manager says, we sat there in the room and he said he had another job. Now you have a he said, in this case, he said situation. And that doesn't lead to a strong conclusion of if the guy filled out the form wrong. So we don't know that. Thank you so much for not launching into disciplining the manager for something we don't even know. We have to conduct an investigation. Point number 6, more justification than, whoa, what was that? Oh yeah, it might have been Olivia, I can't remember now. I wrote down more justification than the form was filled out wrong, so managers don't understand HR policies and practices. I have a question. How many forms have the managers filled out? 1,000? And one was wrong? I don't know, 500? 100? And one was wrong, and we're jumping to a conclusion that we have to train them all because they don't know how to do their jobs? More information is needed there. It seems like a leap, maybe a plausible leap, but it seemed like a leap. I don't want to assume they're doing it wrong. Interns, I know we had a conversation with the team on this afterward. Interns could be possible, especially if you hire a full-time HR person to run an intern program, so they're doing meaningful work. But some of you guys have had internships, so you know when you're an intern, you don't really know what you're doing for a while, right? It takes 30 days, 60 days to sort of be productive, and after that, long after that, you can be even more productive. So hiring interns in a place where they need HR support didn't make much sense to me, but that's okay. It just needed to be justified. This is a culture issue. At one point, it sounded like was said, the vice president of HR, Joyce, she'll just come walking through and she'll tell the managers, talk to everyone, and then they'll know how to do their jobs. And I think it might have been Maddie. I can't remember. Someone said this in the feedback. Like, there's got to be a more robust training program here. And I can tell you, because the other students will not get the benefit of seeing their written report. I mean, it was awesome. They just crushed the training piece. So the feedback, I think, was important and certainly incorporated. But on that, go back to a bunch of, I'm going to stereotype here, blue collar, workers in Kentucky. Mostly men. The only exception, I think, in this case, in terms of sex, is the HR person. Everybody else was men, right? So we're just gonna, have her walk through the cogeneration plants and tell them, and the managers will be like, "Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I guess I'll do it better," which I know is not what you were saying. I thought sending her down there, I don't. It's gonna take entire leadership buy-in, not just the HR person who's managing risk. Okay, number 9, how do we know lack of communicator promotion? Oh yeah, there also seemed to be this assumption that, like, I'm gonna combine a few points here on the guy Bud Johnson. This is not a great guy in my view, and I heard a couple points like he was denied his promotion, almost like that he had rightfully earned, like there's an injustice here, and he's a good worker and blah blah. I don't know. No call, no show. He pouts a whole bunch, threatens to sue, and now we're going to give him a promotion? I was like, nah. I mean, he might be a good performer, but I'll tell you what, like, you talk to most managers, they'll take 70% performers over 100% performer that's a pain in the neck, right? They'll have the 70% any day of the week if they're easy to manage. And I'm looking at that going, this guy just seemed like an arrogant turd. Like, yeah, you're doing the job. We had those job classification issues for sure. You can't have, it has to do with marginal job functions and essential job functions. You can't work 20% out of your time into another job. I can make copies. That doesn't mean you're going to pay me like a secretary. I can make decisions with the College of Business. That doesn't mean you're going to pay me like a dean, right? So we can do those marginal things, but as a big chunk of your job, they should not have had this guy working outside of his job code as often as he was. But nonetheless, he wasn't qualified for the promotion. Now, we can look at the criteria and say the criteria was crap because he was actually doing the job and doing it well. He was doing the job they said he wasn't qualified for. So it sounds like we have a bad criteria issue. But the idea was like it was his promotion and, gosh, we need to apologize to him. Like, no, I mean, the guy knew the rules. It was managed poorly, for sure, but the guy knew the rules. No call, no show. Pouts comes in, and after he doesn't like a form, he threatens to sue. It doesn't sound to me like, the guy I really want on my team. If you disagree, totally fine. Anything I've said, if you disagree, just justify it. Like, make a good argument, no problem. Totally fine. Number 9, number 10. Oh, yes, I wrote this down in all caps in my handwriting. Super impressed. You didn't just discipline the manager. This is right, just lose it, and I begin yelling at the camera. Discipline the manager. Oh, you didn't do your job right. Rehire or promote the employee, and then just move on. Say, we've served justice where it was denied. No. Thank you for not doing that. This is a bigger processes and systems issues. Employee was denied his promotion. No, severance. For sure. Oh, yeah. Might have been Lindsay, not sure. Someone talked about offering the guy severance, waiver of his right to sue. That's fine. Honestly, I think after a week or two, let it cool down. It would be fine. To me, the issue was probably unemployment, which might have been Brenda, maybe Olivia. You tackled that, and you crushed it. That was awesome. I wrote in here, why was this guy labeled as a victim? I guess that tells you where I'm coming from on the matter. And I can be convinced otherwise. You just got to convince with an argument. Oh, the work on self-efficacy. I think it was Lindsay. The work on self-efficacy and trust was freaking awesome. So the word there in my head is culture formation. How do we make this the kind of place where people, want to come to work without shelling out a ton of money and violating our agreements or our understandings, right, in terms of competing in the local labor market? So they're kind of artificially constricted there. But enhancing self-efficacy employees, building, it's called OTI, Organizational Trust Inventory, building organizational trust. I thought was really awesome. And then I think it might have been Lindsay too, came back and said, we can do severance, it's fine, but we actually don't need to because it was a valid termination. Maybe that was Olivia. I don't remember. But whoever said that was like, awesome, great conclusion, totally agree. Brenda laying out state laws for Kentucky was awesome. There was a couple sentences missing, meaning we're talking about Kentucky state laws, and if you guys followed right the case is culture and forms and basically new company, not enough HR oversight, and expanding and unscalable processes. And then Brenda's talking about like wrongful discharge and sexual harassment and this kind of stuff. And it took me a minute to figure out, I'm like, why are we talking about this? It's not even part of the case. But I think where she was going is saying these are some of the basic things managers need to know about their job, right? They're not simply cold generation employees. They are managers. They're agents of the company. They need to understand this part of Kentucky state law and federal law. So I thought that was really awesome. But just like a framing in there. If you find yourself, everybody else, you find yourself presenting something in the case, you're going, well, this isn't really related, but it needs to be said. Then just frame it so we can understand this is why it's being talked about. Also, someone brought up exit interviews. Freaking yes, they're cheap. They're great data. You kind of get what's really going on. If you can get past some of the either anger or frustration, it's good. Classic heuristic on HR. One person is a coordinator, centralized decision making for both discipline and termination. So I was hoping to see that in this. There was some good things in there about termination. Obviously, you need documentation and all that, but you always want more than one person involved in a termination decision. You always want more than one person involved in a discipline decision. The simplest way to do that is you have, and maybe this is part of the HR hires, you have a discipline coordinator. That's 10% of their job or whatever. Any write-up, any formal file, any resignation, any termination, forms related to that kind of stuff that could potentially be risk, I think like wrongful discharge, kind of risk, it goes through one person who's trained on it. Then they can say, good idea, bad idea, is that really what happened? They can ask the right questions. So there needs to be a coordinator on that. This is really small and kind of ticky-tacky. I'm going to point it out. One of the lines, it was written in the PowerPoint slides, Olivia, was creation and implantation of new policies. Now, to her credit, she read the slide and she read it correctly, implementation. It was awesome. But I only bring that up not to be like a turd about a misspelling word, but I bring it up to where I'm like, okay, these guys are sharp and they're killing it and there's a ton of great ideas here, and a misspelling just takes away credibility. So throw that out for everyone else just to make sure. There's also a line in there on success planning. I think that was succession planning or maybe performance management. I don't know what success planning is. One thing that was missing at the end, everybody will need this on their case, is so you justify what the issues are, alternatives, lay those out, then you choose your course of action, you justify that, how you would implement it. Great job, by the way, how you would implement it. I love the chronological timeline. And then what was missing at the end is tell me what you think will happen. Like what's actually where are you going to have resistance points? So what I'm asking you to do is say, yeah, you have a great plan to solve the problem, but let's just be critical for a minute and go, who's not going to like this? Or if there's a weak point in this plan, where is it going to be? And that tells me that we're aware that our plans aren't bulletproof, and then we can respond accordingly. And absolutely loved the sources. It was state, there was court cases, there was theoretical papers, there was SHRM stuff. Like sources were awesome. Absolutely awesome. So good job with that. That's one of the areas that's commonly overlooked. People think, well, here's what I would do. And then my response as an evaluator is like, I don't give a crap what you would do. What does your research suggest should happen? So great job justifying it with your sources. So how long is this? Like 18 minutes, holy smokes. Hopefully this is helpful for everybody else. First group, total congratulations. Well done. I only told you the negative things. I wrote down a million positive things, but I was trying to do this for education for everybody else. Great job, especially being the first group out. Really impressed. Feedback. There was a couple folks' feedback I thought was really solid. Just bear in mind, we're trying to make them sharper. When I read the feedback, I'm assuming that you're referencing the case, you're referencing external documents, state law, federal law, whatever it is, to help make them do as well, frankly, as they did on their written piece, which was really cool. So, yeah, I'm going to get better here in a couple days. See you guys soon.